Imagine the world plunged into utter darkness. The hum of electricity, the glow of streetlights, and the constant buzz of devices all silenced in an instant. A total power grid collapse is not just a theoretical disaster but a looming shadow that could throw modern society into chaos. Without warning, the power that fuels our daily lives could vanish, leaving cities paralyzed, communication networks obsolete, and vital resources inaccessible. Grocery stores would go empty within days, water systems could fail, and millions would be thrust into a desperate struggle to secure their survival. Picture a night where even the distant stars offer no comfort, for what lies ahead is uncertainty, instability, and the very real danger of civil unrest. Human beings, accustomed to convenience and connectedness, would be thrown into the abyss of isolation and self-reliance. Emergency frameworks would crumble under the weight of massive demand and widespread panic. Are you prepared for such a scenario? Do you know what steps to take when the grid collapses and society teeters on the edge of collapse? The following video outlines 10 essential actions to help you not only survive but adapt to the reality of a power grid failure. Because in such a situation, knowledge truly becomes power. 1. Stay calm and assess the situation. When the unimaginable happens and the entire power grid collapses, the first thing you might feel is overwhelming fear. The world plunges into sudden, unnerving darkness, and eerie silence replaces the usual hums of electricity that we've grown to depend on. But in this moment of chaos, staying calm is absolutely vital. Panic is your greatest enemy. It clouds your judgment and leads to irrational or even dangerous decisions. Take a deep breath and steady yourself, because your survival and that of those around you will depend on your next moves. Begin by evaluating the scope of the outage. Ask yourself these critical questions immediately. Is this just your home, your street, or an entire region that has lost power? Glance outside. Are nearby homes also engulfed in darkness? Are streetlights flickering? Or are they completely dead? If you have battery-operated access to the news, radio, or emergency services, use these resources to determine if the power grid collapse is localized or national. The answer will dictate your future actions, so you need clarity now more than ever. Without electricity, many of our modern systems will fail almost instantly. Communication lines may falter, leaving you in an information black hole. Gas stations will cease to operate, and without fuel, escape options will diminish. Grocery store shelves will quickly empty as refrigeration units fail and people rush in desperation. The collapse of power isn't just a flick of a switch, it's the rapid unraveling of everything you rely on. Understanding that this is not just a glitch, it's possibly the dismantling of societal infrastructure, will prepare you mentally for what lies ahead. While assessing the situation, you must also identify immediate dangers in your surroundings. If it's evening or night, does the sudden lack of light pose risks? Trip hazards, dangerous tools left unattended, or open flames can become fatal threats. If you're in a tall building reliant on elevators, you may already feel trapped. Prepare to relocate strategically. Unplug sensitive electronics to prevent damage when power surges eventually strike. Remember, in this blackout, safety priorities shift fast. Consider the possibility that this power outage is more than just a random inconvenience. It could be triggered by external events. A natural disaster? A cyber attack? Political sabotage? The truth might remain a mystery for now, but don't waste time theorizing. Act decisively. The longer you delay, the harder survival becomes. Ultimately, staying calm and assessing the situation is not just step one, it's the foundation of your entire strategy for withstanding this frightening scenario. You must swiftly gather information, steady your nerves, and prepare yourself mentally and physically for what's to come. A total power grid collapse is no ordinary event, it's the beginning of an entirely new reality. You must be ready. 2. Secure a safe shelter. When the power grid collapses, the world as you know it can quickly descend into chaos. The comforting hum of electricity, the glow of streetlights, and the unseen connections that keep society running will vanish in an instant. Darkness will reign, and with it, uncertainty and danger will crawl in from every shadow. Your first and most critical task is to secure a safe shelter for yourself and those you care about. Failure to do so could leave you vulnerable to the perils that arise when society teeters on the edge of collapse. Your shelter must be strong enough to withstand the myriad threats that come with a grid-down scenario. Buildings may be at risk of structural failure due to lack of maintenance or extreme weather, and looters or desperate individuals seeking resources could pose an immediate threat. Lock your doors and reinforce them if necessary. weatherproof windows and secure entry points to create as much of a barrier as possible, ensuring your shelter doesn't become an easy target for those who have abandoned all moral boundaries. Remember, in a power grid collapse, the rules of civilization may no longer apply. Staying indoors will initially be the safest option. The absence of electricity means no streetlights, no alarm systems, and no one to respond to your calls for help. Darkness isn't just unnerving, it's a predator's playground. Without proper shelter, you will become exposed to the dangers lurking in this new hostile world. Desperate people can do desperate things, and they will prey on the vulnerable. Keeping your group protected and secure within your shelter will provide the best chance of survival during the initial surge of panic and disorder. However, not all shelters are created equal. Some may become treacherous death traps due to collapsing infrastructure or environmental factors. If your immediate surroundings pose risks such as crumbling floors, leaking gas pipes, or hazardous debris, don't hesitate to relocate. Nature, too, may seize this opportunity to strike. Storms, floods, wildfires, and other extreme weather events are merciless in a scenario without warning systems or reliable emergency services. Always keep an eye on your environment and make the tough decision to leave if the space you inhabit becomes unsafe. Once you identify a bastion you can call secure, establish clear rules for your group to keep everyone safe. Designate areas for different activities like sleeping, food storage, and waste disposal to avoid contamination and maintain order. Limit unnecessary light or noise so as not to draw attention. Threats outside of your shelter will be vigilant and opportunistic, and they will always search for cracks in your metaphorical armor. Your ability to maintain a shelter that feels impenetrable will dictate your group's survival. This is no time for complacency. The safety of your shelter is your lifeline in the midst of the collapse. Fortify, adapt, and act decisively to protect this sacred space, for it could mean the difference between life and a swift descent into the chaos of the unknown. 3. Conserve battery-powered devices. When the unthinkable happens and the power grid fails, preserving your battery-powered devices becomes a matter of survival. Every flicker of energy stored in your devices could mean the difference between life and death. Communication, navigation, and even light depend on those precious reserves of power you have at your disposal. If you waste it frivolously, you may be plunging yourself into deeper darkness, literally and figuratively. The first rule is simple and absolute: turn off all non-essential electronics immediately. Your instinct might be to cling to the comfort of entertainment, scrolling through saved videos or playing music to distract yourself from the reality of chaos unfolding around you. This is a fatal mistake. Those devices need to be used only for mission-critical tasks. Consider this grim scenario: emergency services may be overwhelmed or unreachable. Without battery life in your phone, you can't call for help. Without power in a GPS device, you may find yourself stranded in unfamiliar and potentially unsafe territory. Each second of needless energy consumption robs you of your lifeline to safety. Those who survive know how to adapt. Hand crank or solar-powered devices are no longer futuristic conveniences in this nightmare, they are the tools of the prepared. A hand crank radio might be your last connection to the outside world, delivering updates or warnings, and reminding you that you are not entirely alone. Solar power, although slow, gives you a glimmer of hope in the endless blackout. The sun becomes your greatest ally, and you must learn to harness its energy efficiently. Think of your battery life as rationed food in a prolonged siege. Every burst of the flashlight, every ping of a message, every press of a button drains away a resource you may not get back. This is not a time to experiment, to see what can still function. It's a time to prioritize, to treat each watt as sacred. Do not use backup power on frivolities like charging Bluetooth headphones or powering small household luxuries, no matter how comforting they may feel. Comfort is fleeting in a power grid collapse, but discipline can keep you alive. Finally, it is imperative to revisit all of your devices and rethink how you depend on technology. Learn low-tech alternatives to some of the tasks you've grown to rely on. A map is far more reliable than GPS when your car adapter and phone are just dead weights. Candles or lanterns outlast flashlights when your batteries are drained. If you have spare batteries stored, guard them zealously. They are now currency in the shadow of societal breakdown. To conserve your battery-powered devices is not just a step, it's a mantra for survival. Waste your energy, and you risk being swallowed whole by the creeping void of a powerless world. Guard your devices carefully, use them sparingly, and above all else, never assume you have just enough time left to spare. 4. Establish communication. When the power grid collapses, the lifeline of modern communication as you know it may fall apart in mere moments. Phone lines could ring endlessly without a response, and the internet, your main source for news, updates, and coordination, could flicker into non-existence. Without proper preparation, you could be rendered deaf and blind to the chaos swirling around you. Communication is the single thread that keeps order amidst disaster. Without it, darkness doesn't just envelope the world, it invades your mind. To begin, arm yourself with reliable, low-tech tools because your smartphone won't last long when charging options vanish. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio must become your beacon in the silence. These radios will allow you to tune into emergency broadcasts where vital updates about the collapse, evacuation alerts, or rescue instructions will be shared if they exist at all. Ensure you memorize frequencies of local emergency stations before disaster strikes, because when panic sets in, every wasted second could mean the difference between survival and peril. Keep extra batteries stored securely, but don't rely on them alone. A hand crank option is your salvation in an extended blackout, ensuring no dead battery silences your connection to the outside world. Equally crucial is having a manual list of emergency contacts. Do not underestimate the importance of ink on paper. When cell towers fall silent and databases dissolve into digital purgatory, the heavy weight of reliance on cloud-hosted information will sink in. Keep this disheartened realization at bay by recording phone numbers of family members, friends, emergency services, and other key contacts in a tangible format. If you're unable to make phone calls due to overloaded or non-existent networks, this list could guide you to safer locations or contact points where these people may convene. Think beyond the boundaries of modern convenience. Walkie-talkies, CB radios, or ham radios, these technologies, often overlooked by the unprepared, might become your saving grace. Walkie-talkies keep you linked with close companions, while CB or ham radios provide longer-range communication. These devices can help you catch whispers of life beyond the veil of the grid collapse, perhaps even guiding you to survival groups or emergency responders nearby. Learn how to use them now, because fumbling with unfamiliar hardware in the heat of the moment could shave precious minutes off your survival clock. Lastly, establish communication protocols with your family and trusted friends in advance. Decide upon emergency meeting points for worst-case scenarios where no communication is possible. A specific rendezvous spot agreed ahead of time ensures that even in isolation, you and your loved ones are working toward unification. Memorize escape routes and train yourself to adapt to limited, basic communication methods, such as written notes, signal mirrors, or even basic sign language if the noise of panic drowns out your voice. Silence during a power grid collapse is far more terrifying than the dark. There's no telling what's out there, beyond your immediate sight and sound, lurking, waiting. 5. Ensure access to clean water. When the power grid collapses, society as we know it may rapidly descend into chaos, and one of the first critical resources to vanish could be clean water. You must act swiftly and decisively because access to water is a matter of life and death. Municipal tap water systems are highly dependent on electrical power, and their failure could leave your household vulnerable to dehydration, disease, or worse. Without preparation, the consequences are chilling. Start with any pre-stored water supplies you may already have. If you don't have an emergency stash, you've placed yourself in a perilous situation. Time to get resourceful. Use water purification methods such as portable filters, iodine tablets, or boiling in the unlikely case that fire or heat sources remain operational. Remember though, simply finding water isn't enough. Any water from lakes, rivers, puddles, or even melted snow could be teeming with bacteria, parasites, and toxins capable of devastating your health. Every sip must be purified, no matter how clear it may look. Rainwater becomes an invaluable resource when taps run dry, but beware. Depending on your location, rainwater may carry pollutants or harmful chemicals from the atmosphere. Always purify it, even if it seems to come from the sky as pristine droplets of salvation. Use tarps or clean buckets to collect as much as possible when it rains, and guard your catch jealously. Others desperate for survival may have their eyes on your supply. Ration your water intake with brutal caution. The lack of access to clean drinking water can quickly spiral into a nightmare. Use water only for essential purposes like drinking, and limit or eliminate water use for hygiene purposes such as washing hands or bathing. You're in survival mode now, and every drop counts. Learn to adapt. Small sips spaced throughout the day can prolong endurance under dire circumstances. Be vigilant. Others may be in just as much trouble as you are, and desperation can drive people to horrifying decisions. Guard your water with your life, for in a collapse, water is currency, and stealing or even fighting over it become the horrifying new reality. Your neighbors, friends, or strangers on the street could transform into rival survivors prepared to do anything to claim what you've stored. Above all, don't give in to hope that clean water will soon return. The infrastructure required to restore municipal systems to working order could take months, if not longer, in the aftermath of a total grid collapse. Accept that clean water is now a privilege, not a guarantee. Adapt quickly, think ahead, and don't allow the scarcity of this vital resource to lead to your undoing. Failing to secure clean water will usher disease and thirst at a terrifying speed. This isn't just survival. This is war, a relentless battle to keep your body hydrated while the world spirals into madness. Will you be prepared to fight for every drop? 6. Organize emergency food supplies. When the power grid collapses, the world as we know it plunges into chaos. Darkness consumes the streets, refrigerators warm ominously, and the clock starts ticking against your survival. Food, the essence of life, becomes a precious resource that can quickly determine who makes it through the days of uncertainty ahead. Organizing your emergency food supplies is not just a practical step, but an act of preparation against inevitable scarcity. Without this, hunger will creep into your home, and desperation could force you to forgo safety in your quest for sustenance. Focus on non-perishable foods, those that don't rely on electricity or refrigeration. Canned goods should be your frontline defense against hunger. Canned tuna, soups, beans, and vegetables can last for years, often outliving the duration of any plausible crisis. But don't just stockpile mindlessly. Ensure that your supplies are high in calories and designed to sustain you through grueling times. This is not about gourmet meals, it's about survival. Protein bars, for instance, might feel like only a small bite, but their dense nutritional content could mean the difference between energy to act and succumbing to fatigue. Dried fruits provide natural sugars and can be a welcome reprieve amidst the bleak monotony of emergency rations. Remember, without refrigeration, perishables will turn against you. Darkened kitchens become breeding grounds for bacteria when milk curdles and meat spoil. Eating contaminated food could cost you your life at a time when every decision counts. Your primary rule in a collapse is to avoid compromised items at all costs. The same applies to bulk frozen goods. Once your freezer loses power, these foods will only offer a fleeting benefit before becoming a liability. But don't stop at canned goods and packaged snacks. If you have the time now, consider investing in long-term survival options like dehydrated meals or vacuum-sealed rations designed to last decades. Water will also be in high demand, so look for dried foods requiring minimal preparation or liquids. Pre-cooked rice packets, instant oatmeal, or pasta will allow you to transform limited resources into meals if you still have a portable stove or fire to cook on. Think carefully about fuel availability as you plan your food supplies. Organizing your food is just as critical as selecting it. Scatter your supplies across your home to reduce the risk of losing everything in a raid. Yes, you may be raided. When hunger drives people to desperation, ethical boundaries collapse with terrifying speed. Stash some of your stock in unexpected places: a bin in the garage, a false compartment in your pantry, or even behind a pile of tools in the shed. Visibility is vulnerability. Finally, teach your household how to ration effectively. If you indulge in your supplies too quickly, you may run out before help arrives or before you've devised a longer-term strategy. Hunger can twist minds and breed panic. A steady hand and a calculated approach can be your family's most powerful tools in a survival situation. Organizing emergency food supplies is not just about saving yourself, it's about ensuring you and your loved ones can outlast the chaos. The clock is ticking. Will you be ready when the lights go out? 7. Create or maintain light and heat sources. When the power grid collapses, the comforting hum of electricity vanishes, plunging you into an eerie darkness that seems to stretch endlessly. Light and warmth become your lifelines. Without them, the shadows grow longer and the cold cuts deeper. You must act swiftly and decisively to create or maintain these essential sources of survival, but beware, your choices could mean life or death. First, confront the darkness. A flashlight may be your salvation, its narrow beam piercing through the void. Stock extra batteries now. Time is not on your side when the collapse hits. If you find yourself without a flashlight, candles may offer a flicker of hope. But beware their flaming wicks. If there's even the faintest hint of a gas leak nearby, one spark could spell disaster. Consider battery-powered or hand-crank lanterns as a reliable alternative, offering illumination without the deadly risks posed by open flames. The key is preparedness. Don't find yourself fumbling blindly when the lights are gone. Heat will be your next battle. The cold can creep in like a predator, relentless and unforgiving, especially in winter's merciless grip. Layer up hoodies, thermal socks, scarves, gloves, and anything that shields your vulnerable flesh from exposure. Thermal emergency blankets. Those crinkly, foil-like sheets can stave off the chill by trapping your body heat. They may look unassuming, but they can mean the difference between staying alive or succumbing to hypothermia. Your home itself might serve as your fortress against the advancing cold, but only if you're careful. Seal windows and doors to trap what little warmth remains inside. Huddle together with loved ones to share body heat. This is not the time for pride or personal space. Every breath of warmth must be conserved in this fight. If you dare, you might consider utilizing more primitive methods of heat generation, but tread carefully. Small, controlled indoor fires, like those in a fireplace or wood-burning stove, can ward off frost's biting teeth, but recklessness will be your downfall. Ensure proper ventilation. The invisible killer of carbon monoxide poisoning lurks in poorly ventilated fires. If your survival plan doesn't include a proper fire source, now is the time to prepare. Stock wood, waterproof matches, and fire-starting materials before calamity strikes. The reality of a power grid collapse is terrifying because it forces you to confront primal necessities that modern conveniences have long concealed. Without reliable light and warmth, the unrelenting darkness and bone-chilling cold will sap not only your body but also your morale. Whether it's the flicker of a candle, the crackle of a fire, or the hum of a battery-powered lantern, remember this: it is human ingenuity, not comfort, that will light your path and warm your spirit during these harrowing times. 8. Secure your home. When the power grid collapses, the safety of your home becomes your first and last line of defense against a world plunging into chaos. Darkness breeds desperation, and in a crisis like this, even familiar faces can transform into threats. To ensure your survival and the safety of your loved ones, securing your home isn't just important, it's essential. Leave no corner left unguarded, for in times of lawlessness, the unprepared become prey. The very first step is to lock down every possible entry point. Double-check that all doors and windows are locked, bolted, and reinforced. A locked door may seem trivial, but to a looter or a desperate opportunist, even a single window left ajar represents an invitation to destroy your sanctuary. Consider additional safeguards such as fortifying weak doors with metal brackets or using wooden barricades to reinforce windows. Remember, glass shatters easily. What can't be broken into must be your goal. If there's time and materials, board up vulnerable areas to create a fortress resistant to invasion. Even more insidious is the threat of someone entering through sheer cunning. Build decoys. Leave external lights off or curtains closed to give the illusion that your home is already abandoned, dark, desolate, unworthy of exploration. Desperation blinds reason. Those who look to raid homes often target ones they think are easy and populated with resources. Don't be an easy target. But securing your home physically is only part of the equation. It's also crucial to create a network of trust with your neighbors, if they prove worthy of it. Communities that come together in a time of need are less likely to fall victim to the spreading violence of a world without power or consequences. Coordinate patrols, develop communication systems that don't rely on technology, and clearly delineate boundaries around your shared spaces. However, tread carefully, for trust is fragile in dark times and alliances can fracture unexpectedly. The most terrifying risk is human desperation, and you must assume the worst from everyone outside your walls. Keep weapons readily available and only in responsible, trained hands. Self-defense is vital when the rule of law has been stripped away, and your life depends on your ability to act swiftly. An unarmed household becomes an easy target, so even rudimentary tools for protection can make a life or death difference. The collapse of the grid is not just a loss of power, it's the loss of order. Without lights, cameras, or alarms, crime inevitably spikes, and worse still, there's no cavalry to rely on. This level of vulnerability must be countered with vigilance. Create schedules for keeping watch. A well-secured home means nothing if intruders can catch you unaware. The grim reality is simple. By securing your home, you draw a line in the sand for those who would take what is not theirs. But hesitation or negligence will lead to chaos breaching your gates. Be ready to face the shadows outside with unwavering resolve, for what's at stake is nothing less than your survival in an unforgiving night. 9. Be prepared for medical needs. When the power grid collapses, the world as you know it will instantly become far more dangerous. Accidents that were once easily managed, minor cuts, scrapes, or even a twisted ankle, will suddenly carry much greater risks. Without the safety net of modern healthcare facilities and the ability to summon paramedics with a simple phone call, your preparedness for medical emergencies could mean the difference between life and death. This is not an exaggeration, it's a terrifying truth of life post-collapse. Start by assembling a robust, professional-grade first aid kit. The cheap kits you might find in a convenience store won't cut it in a grid-down scenario. Think bigger. Your kit must be equipped with essentials like sterile gauze, antiseptic wipes, trauma scissors, splints, and a variety of bandages. But don't stop there. You'll also need tools to treat more serious injuries, such as surgical-grade stitching materials for deep wounds and tourniquets for life-threatening bleeding. If the power grid stays down for weeks or even months, wounds could easily get infected without proper care, turning small injuries into lethal threats. Medication is another critical area where meticulous preparation is required. Stockpile any prescription medications that you or anyone in your family rely on to survive. Without pharmacies to refill them, running out of vital medications like insulin or heart medicine could have disastrous consequences. Furthermore, you'll need over-the-counter medicines for common ailments such as fevers, colds, or gastrointestinal issues. Consider adding pain relievers, antihistamines, and antibiotics to your supply as well while they're still available. Remember, once the grid goes down, looting and supply shortages will sweep through stores in hours, if not minutes. But having the supplies is only half the battle. You also need knowledge. Basic first aid skills aren't just helpful, they are absolutely crucial. If you don't already know how to perform CPR, stop severe bleeding, or treat burns, now is the time to learn. Take a certified first aid course while they're still accessible. Invest in detailed survival and medical handbooks that you can consult offline, because once the grid fails, the internet will vanish with it. Those books may become your lifeline in the absence of professional healthcare. It's also terrifying to consider, but your medical preparations must account for the long term. With hospitals incapacitated, you may be faced with situations that would typically require a doctor. Are you prepared to lance an abscess or reset a broken bone? Will you know what to do when a fever rages out of control or an infection threatens to spread through the bloodstream? These scenarios aren't just theoretical, they're inevitable. Do not underestimate the importance of medical preparedness. Neglecting this step could render even the most hardened survival strategies meaningless. Without your health, you are as vulnerable as prey in a world that has reverted to chaos. Every forgotten bandage or unlearned skill could cost lives, perhaps even your own. There is no room for error. Get ready before it's too late. 10. Plan for the long term. When the grid goes dark and doesn't come back on, you must face an uncomfortable truth: this is no temporary glitch. This is survival. If a total power grid collapse endures for weeks or months, society as you know it will be unrecognizable, and the only ones who make it through are those who can plan beyond just the immediate chaos. First and foremost, begin by accepting that you may not have access to the modern conveniences you once took for granted. Refrigerators will no longer hum in the background, store shelves may be stripped bare within days, and even clean water could become a scarce commodity. Without basic necessities, you'll need to strategize options for long-term sustainability, and this requires both ingenuity and grit. Bartering could quickly become the new currency. Cash may soon be worthless, so consider what skills or resources you have that could be traded for something you don't. Medicine, tools, preserved food, or even critical knowledge such as first aid or mechanics may become the keys to your survival. Start building relationships with your neighbors now. Trust could become as valuable as gold in this dystopian reality. Together you might prioritize tasks like securing food and filtering water, strengthening your collective survival chances. Speaking of food, you won't be able to rely on grocery stores, delivery services, or even government aid if the collapse drags on. Growing your own food will quickly rise from a hobby to a vital skill. If you haven't started already, you need to think about starting a vegetable garden or learning to hunt, fish, or forage before it's too late. Seeds may become some of the most valuable commodities, and the ability to cultivate your own crops will provide not just sustenance, but a sliver of stability in an unstable world. Energy sources will also demand your immediate attention. Generators can be invaluable, but be cautious. Limited fuel supplies will make them temporary fixes, rather than sustainable solutions. You might consider solar panels for a more resilient system, though even that comes with its limitations. Candlelight and fire might sadly become your companions as natural light fades each evening. Entire nights could stretch into suffocating darkness if you're unprepared. shelter, and safety are paramount in the long term. If the outage drags on, it will matter less about what's happening with the power and more about who is watching your resources. Desperation breeds danger, and those unprepared for this grim new reality may turn their desperation toward you. Fortify your home and create contingency plans for security. Learn how to protect what little you have, for lawlessness could creep in as soon as hope begins to evaporate. Planning for the long term isn't just about logistics, it's about mindset. This is survival, and the sooner you face it, the better your chances become. Start small, prepare deliberately, and above all, stay vigilant. This new world is not for the faint of heart, it's for those ready to adapt, endure, and protect their futures at all costs. No one is coming to save you. You must save yourself.